watching what greatness is all about.
Where's Larry Bird in all this?
Has it blocked by Elijah Wan.
Oh, 85, 81. Wilt Chamberlain driving in the corner.
Let me tell you a story. Not a fable, not a myth, but a legend that was as real as the roar of the crowd and the bounce of a ball on hardwood. His name was Wilton Norman Chamberlain, but the world knew him as Wilt, or the Big Dipper. Standing 7 feet 1 inch tall, he was a basketball phenomenon, an athlete who redefined what human beings believed was possible on a court. He didn't just play the game, he bent it to his will, doing things no one had ever seen and no one has ever repeated. But behind the towering figure, behind the records and the myth, was a man. A boy who once felt lonely in his own skin, a competitor who faced more criticism than most champions, and a restless spirit who sought fulfillment not just in numbers, but in meaning. Wilt was born on August 21st, 1936, in West Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, into a working-class family. His mother worked as a homemaker, his father was a welder, and their household was tight-knit but modest. From the moment Wilt could stand, people noticed his height. As a child, he was taller than almost everyone around him, which sometimes made him feel awkward and different. He was shy, often self-conscious, a gentle giant who hadn't yet realized his own power. But when he picked up a basketball, the world shifted. On the playground, his size became an advantage. His long strides, enormous hands, and natural coordination made him a force that couldn't be ignored. By high school, playing for Overbrook High, Wilt became a local sensation. He once scored 90 points in a single game and tallied 15 points in just 1 minute. Sports writers couldn't believe the stories they were hearing, and scouts from all over the country came to watch the teenage giant who could sprint the length of the court in just a few steps, leap over defenders, and dunk with ease. But Wilt wasn't just big. He was quick, agile, and determined. His talent transcended mere size. In 1955, Wilt enrolled at the University of Kansas, where he immediately became one of the most anticipated college athletes in the country. His varsity debut was explosive, 52 points and 31 rebounds, still a Kansas school record. But despite his individual dominance, Wilt's college years were frustrating. Opposing teams used stall tactics, holding the ball for long stretches just to keep it away from him. They quadruple-teamed him, slowed down the pace, and dragged games into exhausting, low-scoring battles. Kansas made it to the NCAA championship in 1957, only to suffer a heartbreaking triple overtime loss. For Wilt, the defeat wasn't just about losing. It was about feeling caged, restrained by systems designed to suppress his gifts. He later admitted, "I wanted to run, to play, to do the things basketball players were supposed to do, but too often, his talent was met not with celebration, but with resistance." Frustrated with college, Wilt left after his junior year and joined the Harlem Globetrotters in 1958. For a year, he traveled the world, dazzling crowds with his athletic feats, his humor, and his sheer presence. Playing with the Globetrotters taught Wilt showmanship, resilience, and the power of entertainment, but deep down, he hungered for the biggest challenge, the NBA. In 1959, Wilt finally made his professional debut with the Philadelphia Warriors, and the league was never the same. In his rookie season, Wilt averaged an unfathomable 37.6 points and 27 rebounds per game, winning Rookie of the Year, MVP, and All-Star MVP, an accomplishment no player has ever matched. Fans packed arenas just to see him play. Reporters described watching Wilt as gazing up at a skyscraper. He didn't just break records, he obliterated them. And then came the night that would define his legend forever. March 2nd, 1962, Hershey, Pennsylvania. It was a small-town game, barely covered by the press, with no television cameras, just 4,124 fans, many of whom had no idea they were about to witness history. Wilt couldn't miss. By halftime, he had 41 points. By the end of the third quarter, he had 69. His teammates kept feeding him the ball. The Knicks tried everything: double teams, fouls, stall tactics. But nothing stopped him. With under a minute to play, Wilt scored his 100th point. Fans stormed the court, lifting him onto their shoulders. A now iconic photograph was taken. Wilt, sitting on a stool, holding a piece of paper with 100 written on it in big, bold numbers. It became one of the most famous images in sports history. That night wasn't just a game. It was a moment when a human being touched the edge of the impossible. Yet for all his individual brilliance, Wilt's career was often shadowed by criticism. His greatest rival, Bill Russell of the Boston Celtics, had the one thing Wilt lacked: championships. Where Wilt was the offensive titan, Russell was the defensive genius, the team-first leader who stacked up rings. Their rivalry defined an era: two titans battling for basketball supremacy. And for years, Russell came out on top. Critics called Wilt a stat patter, a man more interested in numbers than victories. But in 1967, Wilt finally silenced the doubters. Leading the Philadelphia 76ers, he toppled Russell's Celtics and captured his first NBA title. It wasn't just a personal victory, it was a statement. Wilt could win, and win big. 5 years later, as a member of the Los Angeles Lakers, Wilt added a second championship, this time anchoring a team that won a then-record 69 games and rattled off 33 consecutive wins, still the longest streak in NBA history. Even as his scoring declined, Wilt evolved into a brilliant passer, defender, and leader. He proved he wasn't just a solo act, he was a champion. When Wilt retired in 1973, he left the NBA holding over 90 records, many of which still stand today. But Wilt's life after basketball was as colorful and complex as his playing days. He dabbled in acting, famously starring alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan the Destroyer. He became a successful businessman, investing in real estate, restaurants, and nightclubs. He even played professional volleyball, earning a place in the Volleyball Hall of Fame. Yet behind the public figure was a man wrestling with his own legend. Wilt was famously private and famously boastful, particularly about his love life, once claiming he'd been with over 20,000 women, a claim that sparked endless fascination and skepticism. But friends described him as warm, generous, and sometimes lonely. He never married, never had children. He spent much of his post-basketball life reflecting on his legacy, wondering how he'd be remembered. Wilt Chamberlain passed away on October 12, 1999, at the age of 63, from heart failure. His death sent shockwaves through the sports world. How could a man so strong, so larger than life, be gone? But in truth, Wilt had already achieved a kind of immortality. His records, 100 points in a game, 50 points per game in a season, 55 rebounds in a game, remain untouchable. His name is spoken with reverence wherever basketball is played. Every time a young player dunks over an opponent, every time a big man puts up a dominant stat line, every time someone asks, "Who's the most dominant player ever?" Wilt's name rises to the top. But beyond the stats, Wilt left something even greater. He left wonder. He made people ask, what's possible? How high can we go? Wilt Chamberlain wasn't just a basketball player. He was a pioneer, an icon, and a reminder that sometimes the limits we think exist are only waiting for someone brave enough to shatter them. There will never be another Wilt, not because of his size, not because of his records, but because of his spirit. He was the giant who made us believe the impossible wasn't just possible, it was real.